Alright, this is gonna be awesome. We are gonna be getting into Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty for real.
First up, CDPR wanted us to use B-roll for the video of this to not accidentally spoiler some of the story stuff. So,
Makes
sort of
sense.
like this game when it first released, and we all said, imagine how it could have been. This time, I have to say, imagine how good it may be, because despite its issues, Phantom Liberty and attached the 2.0 patch definitely do improve a great deal to an originally flawed game, which
As
after this update
expected.
and DLC feels a bit like shooting an ugly
And yes, if you don't know, Cyberpunk 2077 came out as one of the worst games of probably all time. You know? 5 times more bugs than any Bethesda game even, and that's saying a lot. But, over the years, the developers have fixed things, and now the game's pretty decent. At the bare minimum, people are gonna enjoy it. They're bumping up the graphics, and here is the new expansion.
duckling the moment it realized it was a swan, just saying, fly, pretty bird, blam. That's it. Thanks for playing, because this is the only DLC we'll see for this game. Let's get the facts out of the way. Coming out soon as a DLC for Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty promises some of the following. A new location in the city, Dogtown, steeped in crime, a place where the cops don't come, and it's ruled by a crime lord and run by his private military. New radio stations, including one actually DJ'd by Idris Elba. Idris Elba as one of the main characters, more new characters as well as returning old ones, new quests, new gigs, and a new type of randomly generated dynamic mission within Dogtown that involves airdrops and deliveries, new boss fights, a new relic skill tree specifically for the DLC, more than 100 new weapons, cyberware, cars, and clothing. And it also raises the level cap to 60. And you have about 2 to 3 branching paths for decisions.
Yeah, that's a lot of things, technically, right? But how good are they? That's to be determined. But, you know, judging how they have done everything so far, it seems like this is not gonna be bad. I mean, the only bad side, really, about this expansion is that you kind of need it, because the relic tree and level cap are locked behind this expansion. So it's kind of a must-buy situation, almost technically. But they did add some neat things, like, for example, you can skip the game until you get into Liberty City, you know, if you're not a new player coming back.
In the DLC itself. And that's all outside, of course, the 2.0 update. Speaking of updating, here's an update to the channel. We're almost caught up to PewDiePie's subscriber numbers. With your help, we can get there. Subscribe. My brand is me. My sponsors are you.
Smart.
Let's do this. First, the game starts off with you choosing your own character after a mission in Act 2 of the main game or starting anew. Either one nets you the ability, of course, to redo your perks to fall in line with the new 2.0 updates, which means more perks. And most of the perks now are actually moves or actions or abilities, removing a huge number of the boring +5 to walk, speed, BS.
Oh man, Starfield hearing that is already on Minecraft deletion character watch. Ho. Imagine your perk system being something more than a generic +5 to damage of X type. Which, by the way, doesn't work in Starfield, if anyone's wondering. Ballistic perk does not work, actually. It's great.
Drops the president into Night City's Dogtown as she is shot out of the sky and you're hired by a runner on board, a secretive character who works with the president and needs you to help her get her out. Now, this breaks down into more than about 10 missions, as well as almost 20 side missions as you try to save the president, as well as figure out what's going on and why they're involved, moving you all throughout the location and then culminating in, well, something I can't talk about. First, some facts. Dogtown isn't massive, but it's pretty packed with new groups, people, and quests. And CDPR has tried their best to make it make sense that some new location.
I mean, this expansion is gonna cost what? It's not a full release or anything. It doesn't cost $70. It's like 30 or 40 or something like that. So yeah, it's obviously not gonna be as big as the base game. Expecting that would be kind of insane.
In the city is just randomly popped up, and after you get in and start working through it, it's as seamless as this kind of thing is actually going to be. But be aware, it's a bit like finding out there's a secret nightclub at your high school, or this time it's a couple city blocks, some skyscrapers, and a bar, so more like an entire underground at your high school. But you just sort of have to buy off in fiction. Phantom Liberty bills itself as a spy espionage story, and that does bring us to the fiction a little bit. Because that is true if you think of spies as Jason Bourne, James Bond, or Atomic Blonde versus the Good Shepherd. And that's fine because it fits perfectly with the new patches and updates, and it's the over-the-top action that I think a lot of us do expect from Cyberpunk. And there really is nothing as enjoyable as unloading a small army depot into a cybernetic crowd and then suddenly remembering, oh shit, this game has some RPG elements. And then realizing RPG also stands for rocket propelled grenade, and your cyborg has grenades and can now dash faster than a questionably tested high school sprinter. No lie, sometimes I actually felt bad for the enemies now, because you can dash so fast you can be behind them as the...
These absolutely degenerate and nonsensical school analogies, definitely American.
Grenade you threw is landing in front of them. It's like watching 9 cheap cyborg versions of the Mountain try to catch a drone with a muffin taped to it. But man, it is fun. Even the story's first few missions are obviously there to flex the changes to the gameplay systems, setups where smart use of the new...
also, if you want to return to this game, keep in mind, if you could barely run this thing previously because your PC was old, well, maybe you have not heard, but yeah, that's probably going to become worse for you because they are upping the quality of the game textures, graphics, and all of that jazz. So, people who previously could play this on low settings, probably now there's a chance you can't.
Perks can change the entire way it actually feels to enter, engage, and then egress from combat. Then adding in the cyberware has changed as well, dramatically so. And stamina and the DLC is a really good example of experimental situations where those are all used and you can see those changes instantly. For example, the 2.0 update changes stamina completely from being attached to running to now being impacted by consistently firing. Think of stamina as the gun becoming more and more crazy as you hold the trigger down, more and more of a spread when it comes to the gunfire.
I mean, suddenly you're in Dark Souls.
It never stops you, but it just makes it more inaccurate. The level of chaos with this new patch and in connection with Phantom Liberty is far higher as your ability to handle it becomes more efficient and elegant. With Cyberpunk's idea of elegant being slicing someone's leg off after leaping 40 feet onto the ledge that they thought was safe. Feels very good. And you can find yourself hacking into someone's safe house 1 second, slowly filtering their files into your own brain box for later use, to driving through the center of Dogtown in an armored vehicle with missile launchers stapled to it like an afterthought. It's pretty seamless how it works between the two, even relaxing the storyline a bit with the character having to wait for information from various contacts, letting the story actually simmer a little bit versus going from cold to boiling and never letting up. And there's enough choice here, especially in the middle of the story, that going either way seems to be a dramatic departure from the other, resulting in a story that, if you like it, would indulgently be worth playing 2 branches. That being said, it is many times hard.
Hey, the more story options you have, the more uniqueness, the more your choices matter. That's obviously what you want in a game, okay? A game completely on rails for its story can be good, can be decent. Hey, at times can even be great, don't get me wrong. But obviously, a story that cares about your choices, cares about how you do things, or what you do, when you do them. Now that is always going to be an absolutely great story that people like even more. So the fact that there's 2 outcomes for this, by itself, that already is honestly super big.
Hard to parse whether the DLC wants you to concentrate on it versus the patch itself. In some ways, it feels like the DLC is a grab to get people to try the 2.0 content versus the DLC standing completely and utterly alone, like an enticing 2-for-1 sale, where one of the thing isn't super interesting, but hell, 2 for the price of 1 suddenly get you off the couch to check it out because everybody needs 2 glow-in-the-dark onesies. I do wish the story was a bit better here. It's not that it's bad, it's just that, as they say in the PR blitz, it's its own thing unrelated to the game proper, despite them trying to integrate it. The story takes a while to get going with the over-the-top initial battles. It then flattens out a bit, offering a series of missions, some action-packed, some where the action forgot to be packed, that has you moving around Dogtown, speaking to the denizens and new characters, and trying your damnedest to stay alive. There are enough missions and activities, though, that this does feel like a complete, full, separate expansion if you do them all. Now, graphically, I like Dogtown. It's a corrupt place that makes most of the terrible places in Cyberpunk originally look like pretty good retail spots comparatively. It has its own shops and bars.
How do they fix roads without taxes? How they did previously, I wonder.
And clubs, and a verticality to a lot of its locations that's a step above the original game. It's pretty small, however, even with that verticality, but it's a city within a city, and that vibe does help to sell the fiction. The locales, the people, the debris systems are all done excellent, and they do a good job of selling that this place truly is probably just scary enough that the cops don't want to show up to it. Also, Idris is in it, so if you love him, here you go. but it's not the same extent as a true companion in many games. So don't be expecting to hang for 40 hours trying to talk him into listening to your SoundCloud DJ set. Performance-wise, we do see some improvements with 2.0, and we've seen improvements in the past. The game runs far better than it used to, and of course it's got DLSS 3.5 for frame generation if you have the proper card. One specific bit about the DLC is that because of Dogtown's size, the game doesn't really have any real trouble in those locations loading or streaming or any of those issues that you may actually see in the larger sections from the main game proper. And the developers have gone a long way.
You hear that? Essentially, he's saying loading screens bad. Loading screens not here. How is that so hard to understand nowadays that you can do seamless transitions in loading screens and things like that? I don't know. It makes no sense in my eyes. Probably black magic or something like that.
Way in adapting and updating the game engine for better performance that is outside the highest ray tracing settings. Make no mistake that Cyberpunk doesn't care about the Steam survey numbers. It's left any of the mainstream cards solidly in its ray traced rear view, suggesting 3080 Ti's just for 1080p ultra ray tracing at 60 FPS, with suggested NVMe install drives for the higher settings as well. So you're not going to be running this at super high settings with ray tracing really even on. Just be aware that the game is not looking at any of the older or even some of the mid-range cards unless you are willing to really turn stuff down. And that's with all the patches and any new updates. Trying to just mainline the DLC isn't exactly easy. As I said there, it does a good job of sort of saying, hold up for a second, finding out who the bad guy is might actually take a little bit of time. Why don't you go and hang out at the bar? And unless you're just particularly wanting to mainline this, it's easy to sort of be sidetracked. Also, like I said, there is enough of a change that I think playing through this twice with some of the major decisions might make sense. It's really up to you. What's also going to be up to you is if you like the music. And just like in the main game, you have a lot of different tracks. Over 2 hours of tracks have been created for the score for the DLC.
Oh, that's so good. The best thing about all these games is radio, let's be real. GTA, if GTA taught us one thing and one thing only, that is you can be the hooker getting your money back. But the second thing is music and radios really matters a lot. So, you know, this is awesome that they have new music and things like that. Eventually, it would be nice if you actually had some goofball stations or whatever and things like that. But, you know, hey, the more the better, right? In this situation, at the very least.
I thought it was pretty good, and I actually enjoyed a lot of it more than Cyberpunk's original score. When it comes to the characters, you have a number of new ones. I do want to point out that while I love Keanu, his delivery isn't known as elastic. He's got a drone setting and he sticks to it. He's the Paxil of voice actors. True. Idris does a bit better of a job here as a character who may or may not hold a grudge due to the terrible things he...
Oh, by the way, this. If I remember correctly, she has the ability to actually cure you and not make you die. So, that's kind of important. Also, she actually can see him and interact with him, which is kind of crazy, technically. So, yeah, she's a big deal. Plus, she's hot, which is kind of makes it a bigger deal. Let's see if we can get a better frame of her. There we go, you know what I'm talking about. Fuck that president, we're in for the actual goods.
Does a bit better of a job here as a character who may or may not hold a grudge due to the terrible things he's done and what's been done to him. I actually liked a lot of the voice actors in this game when it comes to those additions that are set.
I mean, look at this thing. Would you ever sit on this? No. No, you shouldn't. This is like one of those Also, does anyone else see a face here, like a sad face here, right here? You know, this is the mouth, and it's like, and the eyes are like, But anyway, yeah. Man, if you... Public transport, do you sit? I have a feeling no, because there's a chance you're gonna, you know, sit in a pin or, you know, needle or something like that. Doesn't seem like a good choice.
Set upon by the DLC. But did it all become fun? First of all, the patch and the DLC are integrated and interwoven to the point to where it just makes sense to talk about it all as one thing. New skills all over the place, like the original game had some fever dream, and brings Cyberpunk up much closer to the expectations that the original PR and older...
Well, yeah, the patch was designed to actually get people back into the game, and then the DLC is like, wow, DLC. It's a pretty smart thing, honestly, what they did. You know? Well, their luckiest part was literally Starfield coming out, because Starfield is such a unanimous failure that it has pushed No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077 back into the limelight and spotlight, because, it's just so bad. And those are the two genres that people associated. Into the future, wild technologies and shit, and, well, space exploration. So yeah, Cyberpunk won big on the fact that Bethesda is incompetent.
Previews pushed, and the game's original landing missed a bit. It's odd because in a lot of ways it's like World of Warcraft and World of Warcraft Classic. If Classic had released last and was free and taunted the other game mercilessly with how much better it was, being able to now queue up a list of quick hacks on enemies.
I mean, that's what Classic does, technically.
Is profoundly a large way to change the way the game feels, and grabbing some of the new weapons.
We had we did have some news. This was a long time ago, but man, when Classic came out, we did have news that internally the Classic team is like celebrating and being happy, while the retail team is literally depressed. Because a lot of people obviously at Blizzard did not think that Classic is going to succeed. But it did. And it's still succeeding, which makes it even more crazy. And the Classic team... And by the way, the Classic team, literal inept losers that don't understand anything. They didn't even do such minor changes as allowing you to use summoning stones at the start of the game. Which just proves how stupid and bad they are. They're actually incompetent, right? But they celebrated because everyone loved Classic, while the people in the retail team literally had depression. It was great.
And items, as well as integrating how they work differently with the changed systems, offers a tangible improvement in the gameplay. However, one thing to be aware of, while AI improvements are noticeable for all the normal enemies, the game's changes to the police system, which are massive, including new teams of enemies, new tactics, they won't show up in Dogtown as much because...
Yeah, that you have Fight Max Tech now, which I think is going to be a fail, kind of. Because, what does Max Tech do? Well, Max Tech doesn't do a lot. They come down in their stupid birdie thingamajiggy, and then they take 20 seconds to actually drop off, because, superhumans designed to literally fight other superhumans can't jump more than, a meter of height or something like that. And then when they get out, yeah, they're kind of intimidating, but I guess it's, they have abilities, and some of those abilities are just, kind of garbage. You could see it in the actual gameplay trailers that, one has a Sandavist, I think, or something like that. He can, like, move really quickly in a little bit, right? And that's his ability. And he, like, woof, woof, woof. Okay, Chief, you just did a quick move. But what did that actually do? Nothing. You're exactly at the same location that you were previously at. You didn't do anything. You didn't achieve anything. And that's, like, the ability of Max Tech. I think Max Tech is not going to be good.
The cops don't show up there. Just a reminder. I like the location. I enjoyed the enemies, the new boss battles, the new items. A bunch just from the DLC are cool. And the changes to armor, which is now no longer attached to clothing, lets you get your Barbie and Ken on without worrying all the time about how far a 9mm is going to penetrate your sternum if you're wearing a business jacket and no shirt, like you're trying to recreate Miami Vice. There's some enjoyable changes here that are intrinsically tied not only to the DLC, but the patch. In many ways, this DLC is a perfect refinement of what they were trying to do with the gunplay parts, less so with the immersion. And that's what I want to talk about when we discuss the rating itself. The DLC comes in at $30. What's sad and doesn't impact the score here is that Cyberpunk's DLC future is, as I said before, well, not there, because it doesn't have one. Like all DLC, the idea of...
That's really strange. Why would they not have... Well, they can obviously change this later on. They can say, oh, people wanted more DLC, so we made it. And, if this DLC is actually as good at the end as, well, people think it's gonna be, including me, then, why not add more DLC? Actual real places to do things and whatnot. It would be cool.
Why you want to jump into the extension is how much you enjoyed the original title, or if there were some things there that you would like to see improved. But it's much more complex than leaping into a new game. In many ways, 2.0's update plus Phantom Liberty feels like the setup of the original game that it promised, but with the story attached just in case. Because, hey, this works a lot better now, stamped on the game's cover, doesn't always work itself to sell you on retrying it. And this time, with another huge actor to join in on the original team, is a little bit more. So if you liked Cyberpunk 2077 originally, this is worth getting. If you didn't like the original game, it's down to 2 paths on why you didn't, and if this will fix any of that. If you disliked it due to the mechanics, the lack of the police working well, and otherwise, it's probably worth it now, as this adds in an already now fixed version of the game and adds an expansion to it. If you dislike Cyberpunk due to the lack of world interaction and that true feeling of role-playing and choices in missions, that doesn't change much here, though there are some choices in these particular missions. And you might be better off just grabbing the patch, seeing how it feels, before then deciding to leap in. The DLC is a good representation of possibly what the future might hold for a Cyberpunk 2077 Part 2 on a different game engine. But you could certainly start with the patch and then see if you like it enough, and then get the DLC later. So in many ways, this game can have almost 3 ratings. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I do think that the changes and improvements we've seen are reflected better here than in the major games sometimes, just because
I think people are going to be happy with this expansion.
It seems like it was set up to reflect those, and that's fine. It was enjoyable enough. Make sure to subscribe because we will be discussing this a ton.
Anyway, that's the end of the video. ACG, it is what it is. Anyway, this was Quizzer Citizen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.